Hello back. After having entered our historic and projection data, we shall now look at the analysis of your cash flow projections without project and loan. Before we go into the detailed analysis, I want to bring your attention to the veracity of your data and how you can check it. You can double-check the veracity of your data by looking at your total profit and whether it is the same as in your financial statements. Furthermore, you can check your cash and cash equivalents against your cash flow statements. Always be alert when figures don't match your original statements or seem unrealistic. So, how do we actually analyze our data? First, we have to look at our net cash flow. You can find this in the summary analysis of the projections in the sheet called CF Brief. We can look at the net cash flow of the so-called base case, which is the projections according to the data you have put in. The top line shows your projected cash flow for the next 10 years. Please note that this is a cumulative cash flow over the next years. The net cash flow basically shows you the amount of money produced or lost during the given period. You can see that in the case of Majimoto, the cash flow is positive. If your cash flow is negative in an isolated year, this is not necessarily a bad thing as long as it's not chronic or long-term. It may mean an unusual expense or a delay in receipts for that period. However, if your cash flow is continuously negative, this means that you cannot cover your expenses from your ordinary operations revenues. In any case, you can investigate if your negative cash flow is caused by an unusual expense, or if your revenue figures are too low or your costs too high. Possibly, you can find an error in your data. If not, you may need to consider the need for further action to address the negative cash flow in the long run. Generally, if you play with the model to, for example, analyze the utility strategic objectives, be careful to include the necessary investment costs. For example, if your utility wants to test the revenue impact of 1,000 additional connections in the next 10 years, you should remember that the additional connected 1,000 customers have associated costs for pipes, extension, meters, etc. You should include these additional costs in your projections at the expenditure streams in the sheet called CF Brief. Below, you can see the sensitivity analysis. The sensitivity has been calculated with the preset values from the first sheet. But what is the sensitivity? Basically, it is a way to evaluate how different variables affect your cash flow. In our case, we are looking at O&M cost increase, NRW increase, collection efficiency decrease, and at the increase of investment costs. So, if all of your projections are correct, your cash flow will develop according to your base case. If, however, your O&M costs increase by 5%, you can actually see the impact in your sensitivity scenario here. If your NRW costs increase by 5%, you can see the impact on your cash flow here. You can study the impact of the other variables below. As we can see in the example of Majimoto, the cash flow logically decreased in all cases. But it decreases much more in the case of increased NRW. This means that Majimoto is more sensitive to an increase in NRW. Hence, Majimoto needs to control its NRW and make sure that it does not increase. This is a sensitive factor to look out when a utility aims to improve its cash flow. You can see the visualization of your cash flow model in the presentation sheets. Presentation CF visualizes the cash flow projections of the base case. In the sheet, presentation sensitivity, the different sensitivity scenarios can be compared in the upper graph. You can see nicely how NRW has the biggest impact on Majimoto's cash flow. Now, we are done with data entry and analysis of your utility figures. You have learned how to fill in historic utility data and projections and how to analyze your cash flow and different sensitivity scenarios. The next video will address entering and analysis of project data as well as loan conditions.